Today still is November 16th, 2019. This is Jay Waters. I'm with the Voices of Freedom Project and the Americans in Wartime Museum. Today is November 16th, 2019. We're in Oceanport, New Jersey, and I'm with a friend and relative. I call him Uncle Charlie, Mr. Charles Perrone. And sir, if you could just tell us for the record your name and when you were born.
My name is Charles Perrone, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I forgot the name of the church where I was baptized, but I was born in, I believe, I had a problem when I was born, and I was an incubator baby, and I think I was born with a midwife in the back of a store. My mother had a retail store in Avenue X in Brooklyn.
Okay.
That's as much as I could tell you about, and I survived it, obviously.
And here you are. Here you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand you spent some time in the military as well.
Yes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it. When I was 18 or 19, when I was 18, a friend of mine and I decided to join the reserve unit in order to pick out which branch of the service we wanted. We both decided to join the Navy Reserves. And they had meetings in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we went to the reserve meetings. And unfortunately, it was kind of difficult to get a job, but I did have a job at the time. But you always were asked the very question based on your age. If you completed high school, you were being drafted at that time. And a lot of people, and many times you'd go for a job, they would not allow you. They didn't want you as a candidate because they thought you'd be called up to the service. So we both decided to not only go into the reserves, we activated ourselves. I activated myself, and so from the Brooklyn Navy Yard, I decided to go into the Navy. And the Navy at the time, you had to go in for 4 years. But if you activated yourself being a reserve, I was able to only go in for 2 years.
Okay.
So I thought that was a good decision, so I activated myself to join the Navy. So I joined the Navy, and I started in September of 1953, and we left from downtown New York on a train going to Bainbridge, Maryland, which was the Navy boot camp.
So,
And I've never been away from home, not more than Brooklyn or Coney Island, but no real trips.
so 1953,
That's
I'm just looking at dates, so that the Korean War is pretty much over.
There was no activity and no wars on during
Right.
the time I was in active duty.
And was the draft still going on, or was the draft pretty much over as well? Or do
I'm
you
not
remember?
clear on that, but you certainly weren't a candidate for a job, and that's what made me sort of activate myself, because
Right.
I was having a problem getting employment, although I was employed at the time.
Yeah, what was the mood of the New York area and even the nation, if you can address that, as far as you had a lot of veterans, World War II veterans were back, Korean War veterans were coming back,
Right?
and as far as employment and your opportunities that you just kind of spoke about, what was the mood of the nation at that point?
I'm not sure. Maybe they were actively drafting people, but no, I was a draft candidate. I think I've given you the wrong information. I was a draft candidate, but if you didn't have a choice, you would probably get a call to a draft. That's why, from the reserve unit, I decided to activate myself.
Mm-hmm. No, not so much about the draft, not so much about the draft per se,
Right.
just the mood of the nation in 1953.
Right.
Post World War II's over, Korea's over. America's done a lot to help Europe, now Korea. Did you have a feeling for what was going on, politics, or just the country in general, or you were more focused on your next job?
At 19, I was focused more on the opposite sex. I would answer you that way.
Well, and that's fair. That's a good. Charlie, that's a good answer. I just was just curious.
But I do remember, seriously, when the war ended, but I know it now, I didn't realize it then, there were many, many young men coming back from the war, obviously, and there were many places that were built with Quonset huts, which were temporary units really built by aluminum, looked like airplane hangars.
Exactly,
They were
yeah.
homes. They were all over the place, all through Brooklyn, because there were no homes for servicemen coming home, especially young married people. That's
Okay.
what I do remember.
Okay. Well, so after your signing up for the Navy and the trading off that you talked about, what kind of training did you get from the Navy?
I went to boot camp for 3 months in the month of September through to November, and in the Navy boot camp was mostly seamanship. We did some rifle training, but very minimum, if I remember. And cleanliness was a big factor. And they also did some kind of barracks semantics, throwing the trash pail down the middle of the aisle to wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and everybody had to go out in their skivvies just to sort of arouse you and know what it meant to be on alert. And they did that a few times. And you quickly learned that they were running the show, but there was always a wise guy here and there. That wasn't me. And that's as much as I could tell you about it. But cleanliness and being responsible for what you were supposed to do had a lot to do with what you learned at boot camp. But I don't think it was nearly as stringent as what the Army or the Marines would have done.
Okay. Did you get a specific rating within the Navy as far as a specialty training?
I did not have any specialty training. I was a general seaman, and I ended up, well, after boot camp, well, I'll tell you that I was already, I forgot to mention I had signed up for submarine duty.
Okay.
Now, unbeknown to me, I didn't realize what I signed up for, because after boot camp, I went to New London, Connecticut, and that's where the sub school was.
Yes.
And after 4 or 5 weeks of school, or whatever, I decided this was not for me. When I got to on the high range, what I had to go through were some kind of a drill jumping out of a very high area into the water. I believe there was I'm not sure whether there was a fire in the water. The bottom line was I decided living under the water in a submarine was not for me. So I decided to quit. So I went to my commanding officer at the time, and he sort of told me in no uncertain terms, after spending 4 or 5 weeks, you did not fail. You're costing Uncle Sam a lot of money, and you have no right to do this. However, they took me and they shipped me up to Newport, Rhode Island on a tin can, better known as a destroyer.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. I went up to Newport, Rhode Island, and went on the Warrington 843, which was a Navy destroyer. I think there's a couple of hundred people aboard the ship. So as soon as I got on, and I was in with the gunner's crew, which is really just groundwork and painting and odd jobs, I decided I would like to become a cook. So I immediately got to the chief who was in charge of the cooks, and I told him I would like to be a cook. I said, I got some background, I'm Italian, but my name is Charles Perrone. I can only be a plus for you. He said, fine. I got an opening, fine. He looked at my application, he said, you are a short timer. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're only in for 2 years. If you sign up for 4 years, you could be a cook. I said, I'm not going to do that. He said, then you're not going to be a cook. So I went back to the gunners group, and that was it. That was the end of that part of it.
Okay. Well, what was it like then? I guess then 8 months later, you were out of the Navy, right? Did you get out from Newport? Was that your last?
No. I was in Newport. We made a European cruise.
Okay.
And
Well, tell us about your European time then.
Okay, we went to about 7 or 8 countries. We went to Italy, we went to France, we went to Spain, we went to Turkey, and we had an incident in the Black Sea when we were in Turkey.
Okay.
We were anchored in near Istanbul, and our relationship with Russia was not that good at the time. There happened to be a Russian destroyer right in the Black Sea at the same time. And I believe we went on some kind of an alert, but thank God nothing happened. We sort of snubbed our noses at each other as they passed us as we were anchored in the Black Sea. That was the only occasion where we might have had a problem, but nothing ever happened.
Okay. Well, in addition to what you've already told us, was there anything that like really stands out from your Navy time that was either really funny, a funny story, or a scary story?
Well,
or
the scary
exciting
story was when we were in San Juan, Puerto Rico, doing maneuvers, which is black and darkened ship, and there were probably many ships, maybe 20 or 30 ships doing different kinds of maneuvers, both destroyers, battleships, cruisers, and we were simulating war activity, and everything is dark, and this is at night. And for some reason, about 8 o'clock, while we were doing maneuvers and ships are maneuvering back and forth on different, with radar obviously as our guide, and no lights on anywhere, we were hit by another ship on the port side, about 8 or 10 foot from the rear of our ship. And general quarters went on, the alarm, and people were screaming, we're hit by the carrier, we're going to go down, which we're hit by a battleship, all kinds of, this is that 2 seconds before all the lights went on the ship, and we were up on deck with our life jackets on. And naturally in Puerto Rico in summertime, this was in the summer, obviously there were plenty of sharks in the water at this time of the year. And fortunately we did not have to go in the water. And the machine, the damage control group found a way to shore up that part of the ship with mattresses and different paraphernalia. Fortunately, the movie was on at 8 o'clock, so most of the crew, whoever was not on duty, was able to be in the movie area, which is midships in the mess hall.
Okay. And that cut down on potential injuries.
That's correct.
Okay.
But the good news was that we were not, for the next 3 or 4 days, we limped into port, and we went into a dry dock.
And I heard there's a funny story about something that happened in the dry dock.
There is a funny story.
Can you tell us that, please?
We went into dry dock, and I've been in dry dock before, but never with a 180-foot ship. So it goes into dry dock, and it gets sealed off, and the chucks, which support the ship, as the water's going down, I'm watching, and there are 50, 100, or a couple hundred people all around the dry dock. There's children, and there's men, and there's women, and grandmothers and grandfathers, and they're carrying pitchforks and shovels and machetes and a scythe like they cut the grass, and they're all standing around. And by the time the water's getting lower, there's about 500 or 1,000 people. So I'm standing up on deck. This is my first cruise. And I said, what's going on? So I asked one of the old timers. This old timer, I remember it was a black fellow, white, but one of the cooks, probably 25 or 30 years old, which is me being 19. That's like he was 100. And he's smoking a cigar. I said, oh, Perrone, there's probably a revolution. We're going to get attacked. So as the water's going down, there's about 3 foot of water left. They're coming down the steps that go down to the area where the boat is. But unfortunately, the fish are now jumping. They're all going down to collect the fish that are stranded because the water goes out and they're grabbing the fish. and everybody had a good laugh on me.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that story.
I've heard that story now 3 or 4 times, always from you. And
Oh.
I get a smile and a laugh every
Okay.
time. But so
That's the true story.
It's beautiful to get this on the recording. So tell us about then the end of your naval career. You got out of the Navy when and where, and how did that go down?
I got out of the Navy and well, I went to work. I went to work as a mail boy in the textile business. From a mail boy, I got into another job. Then I finally got into a sales job in the garment center, and I became a salesman working in the garment center, selling fabrics. Carried a bag every single day in the garment center, which consisted of 34th Street to 40th Street between Broadway and about 9th Avenue. It was the heart of New York, in reference to the garment center.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for many, many a year. In fact, I was there for the 9/11. I was in New York.
Okay, so Charlie, so we were back to your post-war career. You were working in the garment district of New York. Sounds like a long time. You were basically working up there for a while, and I think as we had to stop the camera for a second, you were telling me you were working there up until about when? In general.
In general, I worked there for 40 years.
Okay.
But those are the earlier days till around, I was already in sales at the time that we're moving up close to about when that unfortunate time of when 2011 came along.
Yeah, so exactly. So now we're going to do a little bit different for any interview that we've ever done before with the museum. I don't think we've ever had 2 people on camera at the same time, so we're breaking new ground. This is exciting. So we still have Charlie, but now we've brought in Carolyn Moro, the daughter-in-law, right, of Charlie. I think I've got this right. And
Right.
so could you please, Caroline, for the record?
My name is Carolyn, West-Moro. My birthday is July 1967. And I was in New York on September 11th as well.
Yeah, so I think what I want to do with you 2 guys together, and you can ask each other questions too, but Charlie, we'll go back to you first, and then Caroline will come back to you. So the open-ended question is, where were you as New Jersey people, New York people, where were you on September 11th, 2001? And as much detail as you can tell us, just kind of what happened that day, what you did, and we'll go from there. So Charlie, back to you first.
I took the bus from Manalapan, New Jersey to come into the Port Authority every day. We were coming down about 5 or 10 minutes to 9 on a beautiful day on 9/11, and we were just about going into the Lincoln Tunnel. I would say we were about a minute or 2 outside of going into the Lincoln Tunnel, and I was probably in the 4th seat on a public service bus, Lincoln bus, and the gentleman in the front seat had a cell phone, and he had said, "My wife just called me, and a private plane just went into the World Trade Center." And we all sort of looked over that way, and we could see smoke, black smoke in between the beautiful, beautiful blue sunny sky. We only saw it for maybe a half a minute because we swung down, went into the tunnel, and went into New York City.
Mm-hmm.
When we pulled into the Port Authority, it was like going into another world. They already had heard the news that something bad had happened. It was not a private plane. But
Yeah,
you could tell from
I'm sorry. So for people that don't know, when you say Port Authority, where was, so you went under the tunnel, and where now you were in the Port
into a parking
40 seconds.
40 and 41st Street on 8th Avenue is the Port Authority. It's a tremendous bus terminal, the heart of New York City's transportation area for buses.
And how far away is that from the World Trade Center?
Okay, the World Trade Center is in the Wall Street area, I would say it's about 40 city blocks, which is probably, I don't know, half a mile maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more.
So pretty close. So pretty close.
Pretty
So-
good, maybe 3/4 of a mile away, yes.
Yeah, so hold that thought, and we'll go back to Carolyn for a minute. So what was your day like on September 11th?
Well, I was already in my office a little after 7. I like to get there early.
Well,
Yeah.
where did your day begin?
My
Just for perspective.
day begins in Long Branch. I
Okay,
would take
so down here,
Actually,
we're in Oceanport, yeah.
Oceanport. I took the little silver train station.
Okay.
I take a train in,
Yeah.
and then I would walk to my office.
Okay.
Ironically, Charlie and I work about 2 blocks away from each other.
Wow. Right.
So, no, yes, he's a garment, so I work in the
Yeah,
garment industry.
yeah.
So, very close, but I was already in the office at that time.
Okay. Okay.
So, I was the only person in my office, and I had the radio on, and someone came on the radio and said, a plane just flew into one of the towers.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's terrible. I have to call my dad. Because my experience is my dad works for the Port Authority for 40-something years.
Exactly, yeah.
And, in my mind, he built the Twin Towers. But I just thought, I have to tell my dad. How am I going to tell my dad that one of his towers was hit? But at the time, there was no radio. No television. It was all radio. So I remember I called my husband eventually, and I said, I got to tell my dad. So that was that. And then he called me back. My husband called me back. And at this time, another tower was hit. The other tower was hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wait a minute. This is not right. And as I'm talking to JR on the phone, he said, Carolyn, Captain Gary, who is our dear friend, is a captain on the Sea Streak, which is the ferry system from
Right.
New Jersey over to New York. So I guess he spoke to JR, and JR just said to me, Captain Gary said, take the ferry. And that was it. All phones dead.
Right.
All cell service. No phones worked. And that's all I heard. That was it. He said ferry. And I thought, okay, I guess, what does that mean? Then I realized the tunnels were closed.
Right.
The bridges
right.
were closed.
Well, so hold that thought
Yeah.
for a second. So, and I'm Charlie, I'm going to go back to you, and Carolyn, I'm going to come back to you next. So let's go back for just a couple minutes and explore for a second what you were thinking between the first plane hitting, but before the second plane hit. What did you think happened, Charlie, when you heard the first plane hit? You said you were looking
When I
out.
saw the panic in Port Authority, I proceeded to walk to my office, which is 2 avenues away.
So you kept going to work.
Yes.
Okay.
But I could see that something was happening. Not only that, by the time I got to my office, all hell broke loose. Phones were down, no
Right,
communication.
right.
All that was starting to fester, and you could see people starting to get panicky
Right.
and trying to use their phones, and they weren't working. Nothing was happening. And then you started looking downtown. There was some residue, a little, maybe not at 9, maybe a little later in the morning, smoke and the smell of the fires coming up toward us from downtown Lower Broadway. They were heading up our way.
What did you think happened after the first plane? Only the first plane. Don't.
I figured that another, I didn't know, I don't remember about a second plane at that point,
Right.
early in the morning.
So,
I was worried about turning around to go home.
Yeah. So you at this point, not to put words, did you think it was an accident, or what did you think?
No, I knew it was something bad. I didn't know much more than that till later in the morning.
Okay.
We knew that it was, then we heard the second plane.
Right.
And then you heard the rest. So
And
we
so-
knew that it was some country or people
Right.
that had decided to go after us.
Yeah. So here's, not to be too specific or impersonal. Do you remember which way the wind was blowing, or did you notice any wind one way or another after the first plane hit? Or could
I
you
can't
see?
reflect on that. All I remember was the most gorgeous day.
Yeah. And I've heard from a lot of people it was a typical Jersey Shore kind of day, New York kind of
perfect.
day, September almost no wind, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember any
Any
wind.
wind.
It
I don't
was
remember
like
any
a
wind.
perfect,
Yeah.
no clouds,
Perfect blue sky.
robin blue sky,
Yeah.
and all you
Robin
heard,
blue, yeah.
all you heard, you didn't hear anything.
Right.
All you heard was
and what was that?
Helicopters.
Okay,
all you heard. That's all you heard. That and feet on the pavement,
people running
walking. Well,
Walking.
because we were in Midtown, walking, just walking,
away.
walking away,
Away.
towards
Away.
the ferry.
And this was still first plane
This was
between.
9
I'm trying to
o'clock.
look at the window between the first plane and the second plane. Before,
What I saw was after the second,
after the second plane.
because I was already in the building. I stayed till after the second.
Yeah. Okay. 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 So I guess then back to Carolyn. So the second plane has now hit. It's later in the morning. There's more people, I think, in New York. I wasn't there. But so then, kind of, what did the mood of the people change?
Yes.
Or what was the sense? Or what did you know that you
All I knew is
at the time? Not,
at the
not,
time.
Not in
No,
hindsight,
all
what
I
you
knew
now
at
know
the
now.
time is what, like you were saying, the first plane hit. I thought, oh, wow, that's terrible. You know, people are hurt. That's awful. I feel bad for the plane, for the people, not knowing that the second plane, after the second plane, now there's people in my office. We have one television. So we all gathered near the television watching it. And, you know, listen. So now all our information is what the news is telling us.
Right.
And then you could see what was going on. The people were rushing and running, and you could hear sirens. You heard sirens. So I, you know, obviously the firemen and the policemen. And so that's what you heard.
And Charlie, for you as well then. So now the second plane has hit. Did you actually hear the impact of the plane? Did you see it? What happened at that
no.
point?
Well, I heard it from somebody saying it.
Okay.
But what really was unbelievable is planes hit, and it was going to be a bad problem. People were going to die. What was devastating was the effect of when the building crashed and you finally move through the day and you really find what's happened. That's what made you
Terrifying.
unbelievable.
Right,
It was
right.
unbelievable, inconceivable that happened. An
Yeah.
accident happened and there was trouble. That's how I interpret it until we finally realized when they started showing the intensity of that blast and the firemen. As you got into it, all, you know, pretty 5, 8, 9 hours later or 10 hours later, you couldn't believe what was going
Right,
on.
right. And not to be overly insensitive, but so second plane hits, and were you still, and this, either one of you can answer this. The second plane now has hit. You either heard it or you've heard about it. Were you now moving away? Were you looking up to see what's going on at the towers or something else? Either one of you can.
No, I just, to me, the smoke was starting to come our way. I didn't have fear that the buildings were going to do anything to me or anything else was going to happen uptown. That's how I interpret it. I was thinking about how do I get home? We can't get on the phone. How do I make sure? That's it.
So you were thinking about leaving, going home. Were you
Going?
told to evacuate or leave the workplace, or what was? Or you just-
Everybody did what they wanted, what they
Okay.
thought they should do.
And Carolyn, what about
That
for
was the
you?
extent of what we did.
I worked for a small company, and our boss called a meeting, and so we all met in the conference room. Let's say there's 30 of us, and we discussed what happened and what was the next step. Where should we go? He was very good to us, and his 2 sons as well ran the company, and of course they offered, you know. Everybody said, if you lived in the city, do you want to stay here? You can stay with us. You can stay in the office. There's other people that lived in the city. They offered their homes. But I was pregnant, and I said, I'm going back to Jersey. So in my head, I said, I got to go home. I have a daughter at home, a baby at home, and I know that, you know, my dad was waiting for me.
Yeah.
And of course my husband and my mom.
Well, so actually, let's explore this for a second too. I heard, so your husband has a boat, right? And I heard earlier today there's a possible story about a boat rescue. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I guess they discussed we could go get her, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't know because there's no phones.
Right.
Now there's no phones.
Yeah, so so what happened to the phones as far as either one of you knows? To the phones?
Well, you know, since no one had service, in my mind I thought, obviously, cell service is off because it's being used for other purposes, obviously not ours.
Right.
So I knew I was going to go. I gathered my things. I think I was the only one in my office that went out that door. A lot of people stayed for a couple more hours, and that is when...
Were they still working at this point?
No one was
No one was
working.
working.
Yeah, okay,
I would say no
okay.
one was working. Our boss, no, not at all.
Okay,
But
okay.
it was, I think people, they were in shock and they were
Right,
nervous.
right.
I think they committing. Do you stay? Do you go? I'm thinking, well, if that's happening there, something can happen in the middle, and I'm going back to Jersey. So
Exactly.
that was that was how I thought. So that's when I walked outside. Like I said, it was quiet. It was beautiful. It was robin's egg blue. There was no clouds except you. No one spoke. There were hundreds and hundreds of people in the streets walking
Right.
all one way.
Right.
And I think
Away.
away towards the river.
Yeah.
Right.
So obviously catching this ferry. So I, started walking. I just didn't know what to do. So I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. So the ferry, I was going to walk towards the ferry. And I thought one of the coolest things was the pharmacies threw flip-flops out on the front. So all the girls with the heels would pick up a pair of
Oh.
flip-flops and put them on.
And okay, I've never. So this is unusual. So the pharmacies threw the flip flops out on purpose.
Oh yeah, so the girls with the heels could take off the
Okay.
heels because we're walking and walking and walking. And once you even got to the end of the line or at the end of the line to the ferry, it was wrapped around. It was, I don't even know how
What
long
was wrapped
miles.
around?
The line to get
Okay.
to the ferry. You just had to wait. There were hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah. So
Zillions of people.
not that I'm supposed to add my personal perspective, but I have seen on TV, and this never made sense to me until now. I did see in the days after in the video a lot of women with their feet were all bloody. And now maybe that makes sense. In the absence of
Oh,
flip
take
flops,
those
they
shoes.
took their shoes off to run and walk faster, with the downside effect that their feet got all cut up. But now the flip flop story, I never heard that. So you're saying that just local store workers just
Offered
dumped
them?
out? Yeah, but
How
so
nice.
must have been women thinking ahead for other women.
Wonderful.
Because I don't think guys would have.
You think there's no way I can walk any farther.
Yeah.
I actually kept my shoes. I still have my shoes. My shoes are wedges. I could walk miles with them.
Do you still have the flip flops though?
Can I tell? I don't. I had them and I never used them.
Okay.
I have
But you
my.
picked up a pair.
Oh, I did because I thought, I don't know where I'm going,
Wow. Wow.
but I'm ready.
Wow. The flip flops of.
I also had a pair of scissors in my bag. I was ready.
What were you
Pair of
doing?
scissors.
Yeah.
I'm a designer, so I was a senior designer. So
Okay,
I
okay.
actually, in our meeting, I took my scissors, all the junior designers, I broke all their scissors in half. In our meeting, all 30 of us, I gave us each half a scissor.
Okay, and so what was the purpose of the scissors?
I'm a Girl Scout.
But what were you? What were you?
Well,
what
I'm
were you
thinking. Well, I'm thinking something's wrong out there, and I don't know.
Okay.
Be ready.
Just to have.
I don't know. Weapon? Oh, I don't know. I was
Okay,
thinking.
So you were thinking personal defense,
Yes,
perhaps, with the
yes,
scissors.
I don't know.
Against whom though?
I don't know. And I wouldn't
Okay.
even know because I don't know what was out there, but I was ready, and I want everybody else to be ready.
And so, Charlie, we're going to go back to you then. So, what was your footwear on 9/11? Not to make a joke out of
No,
a tight
Right.
day.
I had a suit on like I normally
you were
do.
dressed
With-
professional
Dress
for
shoes.
work.
Professional, always dress suit, dress pants, and that was it. Just
And when you started walking, I assume, right?
I walked briskly back. I think somewhere around the morning, 10 o'clock or something like that. Not later, but there was a feeling of problem in the air with everybody that was moving around.
Right.
And in my head, like Carolyn said, how do I get back home? There's no phones, there's no communications. Something bad's going on. Let me get the heck out of here. See if I can get out.
How
Right.
did you get out?
I did. I got on a bus and got home.
You got on a bus?
Yeah.
Hold.
I don't know how. I must have caught the last whatever. I think I got home 3 or 4 o'clock that day.
They stopped, Charlie, you should say, you caught the
So we're
last
recording,
bus.
that's fine. So you just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good info. It's good
Well,
additional
no,
detail.
because
They stopped all
they
transit.
they closed the
The Port
tunnels.
Authority.
They closed the
All
tunnels
tunnels.
and the bridges.
Right.
So that's where it becomes more influential about, the ferries were the only way out because they closed everything else down.
That's right.
So Charlie must have got one of the last buses out. and
He
then
moved
there was
sooner
no
than
other
I did.
ways
Yeah. So
out of the city.
we're back on camera, and Jr. on the back side is talking about by about 10 o'clock in the morning, the tunnels and things, the egress efforts were closed. But Charlie, tell us again, how did you get out of the city that morning?
Somehow I must have caught a bus. Maybe it was earlier than 10 o'clock because I got out of the city on a bus.
And so,
And that was it. But evidently, everything shut down. The
Yeah.
bridges, tunnels, everything.
So I'm trying to get a feel for this. What kind of bus was it? Was it
My normal bus that I take, New Jersey Transit bus, the one
Okay.
I come in. But then everything shut down. The Port Authority was shut down.
Yeah.
The tunnels were shut down.
Right.
The bridges.
Let's go back to the bus for a second, if
Go
I
ahead.
can. So you get on this bus. There's how many people are on the bus? How many people does the bus hold, and how many people are on there? I'm trying to get a feel for this bus.
A bus holds somewhere between 40 and a max of 50 people.
And so, how many people were on there? you think?
Oh, it was full.
Was it like standing room only, packed to the gills, or it was everyone had a seat and everyone's? If you remember.
I don't remember that.
I'm just like digging for a.
I understand, but I would think they probably took extra people on.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically, but I would think they probably had people standing.
And were people still calm? Was there a sense of panic? Was there still
No.
shock, or what was your feeling of not of you, but the other people on the bus?
I think most people were in the same boat I was in. Something very bad has happened, and I don't know the extent of it yet because I have no other communication except watching the people around you with the fear and the movement of major problem.
Right.
That's it. People moving fast, and how do I get out of this?
Right.
Whatever this is. But it's not good. It's something very bad. You can see it in the way they're looking and moving around.
Were they talking and chatting with each
No,
other?
no,
People
no,
were kind of
no,
were they
no.
looking at each other? It was like cold face looking down, or
Shock.
or
I guess shock and how do I get to my destination?
yeah, focus
Or out.
Okay.
That was the
Okay.
tone.
And then-
That was the whole presence of the city where I was. Now we had no idea how hectic it was downtown.
Right.
We were a long way
Yeah.
away from it in reality.
Right. Well, so again, not to ask a insensitive question, but so now you're on the bus. You're leaving New York City. So looking at it from the opposite way, if you remember, what was traffic like at that moment? It's now 10 o'clock, 10:30 at the latest. You're going out of town.
Right.
Was there traffic? Did you notice? Or the tunnel isn't closed apparently
Not yet.
coming in or out.
No,
Do you remember traffic or?
I really don't remember.
Okay.
I would think it was hectic, but I don't know. I don't
Okay.
remember that part.
Okay.
I know I got out. I guess I was so happy that I was out that I didn't. I
Yeah.
do not remember whether there was a lot of traffic. I would think there would have been, but I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, and we'll come back to once you were actually out of New York. So I want to go back to then to Carolyn. We started going down this the fishing boat story of your husband. So let's just go back for one more second. And maybe you already said this and I missed it, but how did you get out? And what was the fishing boat story, if you can tell us from your perspective?
So how I got out was the ferry. So Midtown, the 30s, I think 35th, 37th ferry, 37th Street.
Okay.
So I walked there with everybody else, and I made friends with these 4 girls, and we just kind of just stuck together the whole time. We went to the ferry, waited hours. We waited hours. And we hopped on the ferry, hours later. And I don't even know, I think it brought us to Hoboken. And then from Hoboken, you know, we were on a bus. And they just shipped them back on a ferry. I think that the ferry, I thought I was going, you know, to the Highlands, you know, in my mind. But I just knew I was going over the water, so I was so happy. I was going to go the other side. But I think I went on 3 trains, 2 boats, and I don't even know how I got to Long Branch train station. Someone gave us a ride.
Okay.
But when I hopped on the ferry the first time, there was this young girl who was sitting next to me. So let's say at the time I was 34. So she was younger, let's say late 20s. And she was covered in soot. She was wearing all black. She was covered except for her face. She must have just taken her hand and cleared her face, but everything, her hair, she had dark hair, so you could just see this soot all over her shoes. She didn't move, she didn't speak. You know, I met someone else on a train, and he was sitting next to me. He says, I work in the Twin Towers, and I went out, I took $2 to get a cup of coffee. So he takes out of his pocket, he goes, I still have $2. He says, I don't have my phone. I can't call my wife and tell her I'm not in that building. And I don't even have my car keys to get to my car.
Right.
To go to the train station when
Yeah.
I hop off. If I get, you know, we didn't know where we were going.
Right.
And when I was on a train, I don't really know. It was like a pack. You just a herd of people.
Yeah.
And it was the same faces. And you were so happy to see the same faces.
Right.
And, you know, you don't know who they are. And it was just, you were together with the same people. And they were just trying to clear us out.
Sure. And so you said you waited at the ferry for a couple of hours.
Oh, yes.
Was that because there were no ferries, or because there was only limited capacity of how many people could get across each time?
I think both. I think there were a zillion people. And I think that the ferries they'd fill up, and then the next one would come, fill up. You know, they had to do it
Yeah.
in some type of order.
So from that perspective, if you waited in line for 2 or 3 hours
Yes.
at the ferry,
Maybe
what
2
was the
hours.
mood of the crowd? Was it
Silent.
Silent. People.
Absolutely silent.
So New
because
York-
next to me is another girl who was covered in soot.
Right.
And so then I'm thinking, everybody's thinking things like, what's really happening up there,
Right.
down there, I should say. Yeah.
Well, so New Yorkers who are not known for their patience and
Beautiful.
and open-mindedness.
Oh my gosh, New York is great.
Waited respectfully for
Oh,
you.
they
There
were
was not
wonderful.
pushing or shoving or okay.
People
Wow.
in New York were just
They
they
were-
were blessings.
They were
Each
traumatized.
But they were awesome. Everybody
Yeah.
was helpful
Yeah.
and kind
Yeah,
and
right.
generous. And you
That's
don't
right.
and you didn't even speak. You know, helping someone up on the ferry, or some girl I saw, she fell. She tripped over, like a curb, and someone else helped her up. You know, we don't. You know, it was just we were all together. We were on the same exact boat, all of us.
Well, Charlie, what was it like then? Now you're out of New York and you eventually got home. So what was going through your mind the rest of the day after you were out of the city?
And the tragedy of what happened started to sink in. I guess we put the TV on, they're talking about the mayor and this one, and then buildings falling. Then they started showing, I don't remember when, but they started showing pictures, people going through windows, diving.
Jumping.
Then we realized, and they started showing the collapsing of the building.
Right.
I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
You just couldn't control yourself because you couldn't believe it was really happening, even though they were showing it. I couldn't. So you really were in shock. I think that's what I recall. I couldn't comprehend that what they're showing is not a movie. This really happened.
And then at what point did you hear about the Pentagon being hit and then the plane that went down in Pennsylvania?
yeah.
Where did that fit into your timetable for that day?
I forgot from now. Did the plane where the guys came out of the plane that got rescued that didn't go into the was the same day,
Well, yeah, not so much when it actually happened,
right?
because there's a chronological order of when it happened, but more importantly, when you heard that it happened, how did that affect you, and what were you thinking about the as you heard about the events? So you were there for the 2 towers being
Right.
hit, but then the other 2 attacks, as you found out about those, and what were your thoughts as those
The ones
came
that were
together?
unsuccessful.
Well, yeah, what were your thoughts as the bigger picture came together?
I was very happy about that part, but I was thinking about the ones that went into to the guys that broke in to get the terrorists was just, it's over. That's America. I mean, what we do as Americans when we're in crisis, I guess. That's the only way I could describe it.
Sure.
These guys were just unbelievable. If you would have asked them to do that, probably they would have never done it. It's just an impulse that they got
Right.
so angry. That's all I could think that happened. They weren't trying to be heroes. They just did it, period.
And-
I don't know what I would have done if I was there.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah.
That's the only way I could answer it.
You just never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know until you're there, and you hope to
Right.
God you're never in a situation like that.
Exactly.
But so, Carolyn, it's kind of same for you then too. So as you're getting out of New York, and then you found out about the Pentagon being hit,
Yes.
and the plane going down in Pennsylvania. What were you thinking about a bigger picture? What were your thoughts at that moment?
Well, initially, I guess when we were leaving New York in the ferry, we could look downtown and you just saw this smoke in the sky. You could see it so far, and I thought, I didn't know what exactly it was, obviously, until I got home. Until, I was, watching the television and watching everything and listening, and my husband telling me and filling me in what really happened and what else happened. And I just saw the news, and the news filled me in. And I'm lucky.
Yeah,
I'm a lucky girl.
very lucky.
And yeah, lucky. I think of going back to New York, and they had all, the firemen and the policemen. They would have all the funerals, and you'd see them all, dolled up. The weeks after, they would have
Right.
all the services, and everybody would be, you would just see them all, gathered together and go to the next service, and the next service,
Right.
the next
Right.
service. And you just love New York even more because they're, all those people that sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of people, myself being a guy that grew up in New Jersey, and New Jersey, New York, I think people sometimes, they always think of 9/11 in New York, but the impact on New Jersey was
Sure.
equally devastating because there were so many, as you
So
said,
many
people, commuters or people living in Jersey going up to work every day.
Yeah.
So there was all these memorials throughout northern and central New Jersey for week after week, funerals and.
One of my
So-
favorite stories is one, only because, just being human, hopping back on the train eventually. You have the same people you see in the morning, same seat, same conductor, and you walk on the train and there's a conductor and he's hugging everybody because there's some people that their cars are still in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So he was so happy to see everybody, and it was so nice, and he was so sad. But everybody was the same. They were all happy. They were all sad.
Right.
Happy to see each other, but knowing that some of those cars are still in the parking lot.
Well, yeah.
Really,
So fast forward. Either one of you guys can answer. Then, so the period after September 11th was a Tuesday in the morning, as we just discussed. So what happened on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday? When did you all go back to work? When did things start to feel normal? Even before that story with the train. Mm-hmm. What was the sequence for the next couple of days?
I did not go back to work. Did you go back to work right away?
Or
No, but I don't remember exactly when. I don't know if I stood out
Oh,
a day or two. I don't remember.
no, my boss was great. We
I
didn't
think,
go back.
when did you go back to work? Do you
I
remember?
probably went back that following week.
But you didn't go.
I didn't go to Wednesday. I went the following week, probably
Right,
midweek,
Right.
which was.
I think
I could work from home also. So.
okay.
I
Yes.
think we were closed a
I
few
work. I have
days.
my.
I just remember from a national level, all aircraft was grounded for 10 days. And I think other areas outside of Washington, D.C., besides Washington, D.C. and New York, went back to work the next day. But I think New York, New Jersey, and
Yes.
Washington, D.C. was different. I don't know that, so I'm just trying to get a
Yes.
feel from
I
People
from you
weren't-
guys.
I don't think I
Are
went
you
to work.
recording?
Yep, we're still recording. And
Yeah.
feel free to speak up.
Definitely the following Monday, because the stock market wasn't even open for 2 more
Yeah,
days.
that's okay.
Right, yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't think I went to work for a couple of days.
Well,
Yeah.
you were supposed to go to Italy. We had a wedding in Vernazza
Mm-hmm.
the week after.
Oh, that's
9/11.
right, yeah.
And
Yeah.
his daughter and my daughter were freaking out. And we were afraid if we went, we might not be able to get back home.
Sure.
And so we had to cancel.
We canceled it.
Yeah, that's true though, because the
People that you couldn't learn.
the New York, the stock exchange, the bond markets,
Oh,
all
yeah,
the financial
everything was closed.
stuff was closed for at least a week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was,
At least a week, as I recall.
nobody went back to regular work until at least the following month.
For New York City area and
New Jersey,
and
no.
I don't remember Washington. Okay, yeah.
No, I don't think
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
everybody
we
was
probably
destroyed and devastated, and they didn't know what to do, and the trains weren't working, and you just,
Well, so I guess for you, Carolyn, you mentioned the three or four ladies that you walked down the streets with, and the woman with the ash on her. Did you ever see any of these people again, or you didn't know them then?
I didn't
guess?
know them then, and actually the ladies that I, met, and we walked together, and at one point, they told the people that I was pregnant, and they pushed me.
Oh, for you.
And I was like, no, I'm good, because I didn't deserve it any more than anybody else.
Were you visibly pregnant, or you just?
A little, hardly.
Yeah, yeah.
We were just talking, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Am I get this?" And I'm thinking, what type of world am I bringing this little person into?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that happened.
Well, so New Yorkers or New Jersey folks who maybe have a bad reputation
They should not.
shouldn't.
Oh, I
they,
think
they
New
take
Yorkers
care
are
of their own.
wonderful.
They take care of
They're wonderful.
when people are down. They're going to help you out. Charlie, any specific individuals or faces that you saw in the crowd, or acts of kindness that just stood out one way or another, or acts of unkindness? Did you? And either one of you,
I would doubt
did either
that
one
the-
of you see anything that was like the negative of helping, like looting or fighting or stealing? Did anybody see anything like that?
I know what you're saying. No, I don't think it happened.
Yeah, I never.
Don't
never-
forget, you're talking about a very short, there's like 2 or 3 blocks. I'm at the Port Authority or
Right.
at work.
Right,
That's all I saw.
right.
I got home what time did I get home, Jay? Like 6?
It
6
wasn't
at night?
like, you went this way or that way. It was in a very short 2 or 3 avenues, and I was back to the Port Authority, and I didn't see any looting or anything.
No.
But if there were acts of kindness, they would probably be done, because, New York could be very crude, but not when it comes to something like that, a crisis of that nature.
Yeah, I mean,
Even the bad guys probably would be nice. Really?
I like that. No, I mean,
Oh,
unfortunately,
I'm serious.
Everybody was.
Nobody
I did
would
see
even the
something
bad
really
guys.
great. There
Oh,
was
tell us, please.
there was different flavor people working suits, construction workers. So there was a group of construction workers and a bunch of girls. This one girl, I think she was talking to maybe the girl next to her. She tripped. And she fell over the curb. Like, she just fell. And so she fell down, but she really did hurt her ankle.
Right.
And so the girls are talking. All of a sudden, this giant construction guy comes and scoops her up, and he holds her in line. And we're just sitting in line. And you're going as fast as we're not going anywhere. We're just sitting in line. He held her the whole time. I hope they got married.
yeah, I hope that'd be a great story.
I hope they got married.
That'd be a great story.
That had happened. That was awesome. That was beautiful.
Well, I mean, sometimes you hear these stories of the team wins the Super Bowl or the World Series, a great emotional event that should be a positive turns into a riot and looting. And here's the opposite. A tragedy occurs and everyone comes together and is helping each other, or is at least moving in the same direction, and there's no nonsense. Well, so we normally don't do this. And again, so normally this is, for me at least, this is fascinating. I have my own 9/11 perspective from a different area. And I've never done an interview with 2 people before at the same time, let alone that are related, but are also related from the same event, the same day, the same very emotional experience, tragic experience. So I would submit to each other of you, do you have any questions for each other that you always wanted to ask, or were curious, or just based on the interview?
I got one.
Go ahead.
So you went to work, you came in by bus. I hate the bus, but anyway, came by bus. And you went to work and you turned around and left. Did anybody else leave? And how, I guess that's how
Well,
your
in-
transportation was bus.
In my office, there were about 7 or 8 or
early.
9 people. And it was 10 to, normal hour, but we were a small office. There were only 8 or 9 people. The garment center at this point was dwindling. The whole industry was shrinking a little bit. So we normally were a much bigger office, a lot more people. That wasn't the case. We were down to a handful of people in our office. Handful meaning 7 or 8 people at total. Maybe 9. That's it. My boss was already had moved out to Long Island. He was getting new location and consolidating what was left of the business. So that was a good thing.
Right.
Good thing from the sense that there were not a lot of people
I
in
guess
our office.
I was wondering why it took me so long to get out. But I guess you went in and out. I guess maybe because my boss called a meeting. He was like our father, trying to take care of his
Yeah.
people, which was awesome.
Right.
And he wanted to make sure everybody made the right choice. And thank you for that. Yeah, that was good.
Well, so I've got, I guess, 2 more questions.
Sure.
And you can both answer this if you want to, positively or negatively, or both sides. So a lot of people that I know that have Pentagon experience or 9/11 experience with the Twin Towers have a story about either a good friend or a colleague or a relative that didn't go into work that day or did go into work that day for different reasons, or took a day off, or was sick, or went out for a cup of coffee. I heard a little bit about that, but Charlie, do you have a specific one way or the other, or both, that you want to share? And then Carolyn will come back to you on the same kind of question.
I really don't have anybody that told me. I don't remember a story. I'm sure that I was told one, but I don't remember one offhand.
Okay.
Of that nature, exactly
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
About so-and-so's sister or daughter left the building to go see a
Right.
friend for 10 minutes. I'm sure I heard one, but I don't remember one at this point.
No, and that's fine. I've heard different ones about
Yeah.
people took a day off to go surfing, or
Right.
somebody had a
Actually,
birthday
there's
party.
someone in town
Yeah.
who she thought her husband went to work,
Okay.
and he actually went surfing, and
I guess I gave the hint away.
and
I heard
it
part of
happened. This
I heard
darling
part of this.
couple in Oceanport, and that did happen. And he came home, and she was probably just grateful to see him home.
These were friends of yours, yeah.
Yeah, they live in
Yeah.
Oceanport.
Yeah, and so.
Negatively,
if-
there's also a
Well, no, on the,
Yeah.
we can go back to that, but maybe on the positive
Yes.
side, then your friend that went surfing, is there, I'm just curious, what happened to these folks now, almost 20 years later? I'm doing the math in my head, maybe I
Right.
got that wrong, but
Yep.
years later,
18 years later. So yeah, well, he's still surfing.
does he tell his wife before he goes out surfing every day?
Exactly. It's a good thing I went surfing. No, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, you
No,
don't.
but
Okay.
yes, I don't know that though.
Well, my battery's almost dead.
Okay.
This has been awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Was there anything else that either one of you
No.
wanted to cover?
No, not really.
I think I've got, I want to give you both coins.
Really?
Yeah, you guys are rock stars. This is
Thank
actually
you.
really cool.
Thank
Even
you.
everything's awesome. Maybe hold them up for the camera real quick. And the battery's almost dead, but on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Museum and the Voices of Freedom Project, this is my first 9/11 interview to do. And again, another amazing piece of history, very sad piece of history, but happened in our lifetimes that we're all very knowledgeable of. And so it's great to hear your stories.